Jevin dominated the underground music scene with his precise blue-form beats that hypnotized every crowd. Owakcx constantly sabotaged his shows by booking competing venues, driven by pure jealousy of Jevin's superior talent. Their feud exploded when Owakcx falsely accused him of using banned frequency enhancers, nearly destroying his reputation. The green fraud had been lurking in the shadows for years, bitter that audiences chose Jevin's innovation over his derivative garbage. Tonight's warehouse battle would end this once and for all. Winner claims the scene, loser disappears forever. Jevin watched Owakcx lurking in the green shadows, plotting his next pathetic move. The Blue Master had dominated every battle, but the green pest never quit trying to steal his spotlight. Owakcx claimed Jevin cheated, spreading lies because he couldn't handle real talent. Tonight, Jevin would drop a track so brutal it would silence the hater forever. The warehouse crowd would finally see who truly ruled this scene. Jevin's blue glow flickered as the warehouse lights died, and Owakcx's green shadow spread across the walls like poison. The rival had rigged the speakers with something twisted. Every beat Jevin dropped echoed back, distorted and wrong. Strange figures moved in the crowd, their faces shifting between human and something else entirely. Owakcx's laugh bounced off the concrete, warped into a sound that made Jevin's phases glitch uncontrollably. When Jevin tried to leave, he realized all the exits had vanished into solid black walls. Jevin discovered Owakcx had been stealing his unfinished tracks from the cloud, releasing twisted versions under fake names to ruin his reputation. The blue producer tracked the green thief to an abandoned studio where every wall was covered in obsessive notes about Jevin's techniques. Owakcx had been studying him for years, planning to replace him entirely by mastering every signature move. When Jevin confronted him, Owakcx just smiled and hit play on a track that sounded exactly like Jevin's voice. The horrifying truth hit hard. Owakcx didn't want to beat him, he wanted to become him. Jevin agreed to a collaboration with Owakcx after promoters offered them a fortune for one joint performance. The blue artist suspected a trap, but couldn't resist the chance to publicly outshine his green rival on the biggest stage. During rehearsal, Owakcx acted friendly, sharing equipment and even complimenting Jevin's phase transitions for the first time ever. Something felt wrong about the sudden piece. But Jevin ignored his instincts and focused on preparing the perfect set. When showtime arrived, Jevin's gear mysteriously failed, leaving only Owakcx's system working while the crowd watched Jevin stumble in silence. Jevin woke up in his studio with no memory of the last 3 days. His equipment destroyed, and walls spray-painted with Owakcx's green tag. Video footage showed Jevin himself smashing everything during what looked like a psychotic breakdown, but he had no recollection of it. Owakcx sent a message claiming Jevin had finally cracked under the pressure of their rivalry and should retire before hurting someone. The blue producer knew something was wrong. His hands were clean, and none of his usual substances were in his system. Someone had drugged him and staged the whole scene, and Owakcx was the only one with motive and access. Jevin started receiving encrypted files containing unreleased tracks he'd never made, each one better than anything he'd actually produced. The metadata showed Owakcx as the creator, but the style was unmistakably Jevin's. Somehow the green rival had learned to make music exactly how Jevin would if he were more talented. Fans began leaking the tracks online, praising Jevin's new direction, without knowing Owakcx had made them as psychological warfare. Every day, Jevin felt more inadequate as Owakcx proved he could out-Jevin himself. The Blue producer faced an impossible choice: admit inferiority or try to match music that shouldn't exist. Jevin found Owakcx unconscious in the alley behind the club, green form flickering dangerously close to complete phase-out. Despite their rivalry, Jevin couldn't leave him to die and dragged him inside to stabilize his frequency. Owakcx woke up confused and vulnerable, admitting he'd pushed too hard trying to beat Jevin and nearly erased himself from existence. For one strange night, they talked like equals instead of enemies, sharing techniques and laughing about their most petty sabotage attempts. When dawn came, Owakcx left without a word, but Jevin noticed his rival's next track sampled a frequency only Jevin used, a hidden acknowledgement of debt. Jevin received an anonymous tip that Owakcx had been hired to assassinate him by a rival label threatened by his rising success. The Blue producer laughed it off until he found a green fiber from Owakcx's signature jacket snagged on his studio window lock. Every subsequent gig felt dangerous, drinks tasted wrong, equipment sparked unexpectedly, and green shadows lingered too long in his peripheral vision. Jevin started sleeping with a phase disruptor under his pillow, paranoid that Owakcx would strike when he was most vulnerable. The worst part wasn't fear of death, it was wondering if Owakcx hated him enough to actually pull the trigger. Ready for a challenge? According to statistics, only 3% of viewers manage to like the video and subscribe to the channel before the timer runs out. Write a comment if you made it in time. Jevin's younger sister joined the scene as a new producer, and within weeks, Owakcx had recruited her as his protege. The Blue artist watched helplessly as his rival taught her everything, turning family dinners into strategy sessions against him. She started calling Owakcx mentor with genuine affection while dismissing Jevin's advice as outdated and jealous. Owakcx had weaponized Jevin's own family, creating a rift that hurt worse than any professional sabotage. When she released her debut track, a collaboration with Owakcx that directly mocked Jevin's signature style, he realized his rival had found the cruelest battlefield possible. Jevin found old forum posts from before either of them was famous, where Owakcx had defended Jevin's early work against harsh critics. The Blue producer was shocked to discover his rival had once been a genuine fan, praising Jevin's innovation and recommending his tracks to everyone. Something had clearly changed between those supportive posts and their current hatred, but Owakcx refused to acknowledge the past. Jevin confronted him with screenshots, demanding to know when admiration turned to obsessive rivalry. Owakcx just stared at the evidence coldly and said, "I learned heroes always disappoint you." Jevin discovered that Owakcx had been secretly funding his career for years through anonymous donations and strategically placed opportunities. Every lucky break Jevin thought he'd earned had actually been orchestrated by his green rival behind the scenes. Bank records revealed Owakcx had paid for studio time, bribed promoters to book Jevin, and even bought his tracks under fake accounts to boost chart positions. The revelation was nauseating. Jevin's entire success was built on Owakcx's charity, making every victory feel worthless and manufactured. When confronted, Owakcx smiled and said, "I wanted you successful enough to make destroying you actually mean something." Jevin started hearing rumors that Owakcx was dying some rare frequency degradation disease that would erase him within months. The blue rival felt unexpectedly hollow at the news, realizing that losing Owakcx meant losing the only person who truly understood his art enough to hate it. Other producers were competitors, but Owakcx was the measuring stick that made Jevin push harder. When he visited Owakcx in the medical facility, the green patient looked weak, but still managed to smirk. "Don't look so sad," Owakcx whispered. "I'm taking the satisfaction of outlasting me to my grave." Jevin proposed ending their rivalry with one final battle winner takes everything. Loser leaves the scene permanently and never produces again. The blue challenger was exhausted from years of paranoia and sabotage, craving definitive resolution one way or another. Owakcx accepted immediately, his green glow pulsing with anticipation like he'd been waiting for this exact moment forever. They chose a neutral venue, hired impartial judges, and promoted it as the decade's most important underground event. As the date approached, Jevin realized he didn't just want to win, he wanted to understand why this rivalry had consumed both their lives so completely. Jevin stepped into the arena and realized the crowd was gone. Only rows of holograms replayed his past performances on loop. Every version of himself on the screens lost to a green silhouette, no matter how the simulation started. Owakcx had built this projection chamber to show Jevin every possible future where blue failed and green triumphed. The message was clear. Statistics were on Owakcx's side, and Jevin was fighting probability itself. For the first time, Jevin decided to play a set he'd never planned, just to see if chaos could break the pattern. Jevin received a contract from a major corporation offering global fame on one disturbing condition. He had to publicly reconcile with Owakcx and pretend their rivalry was scripted. The blue artist hated the idea of reducing years of real pain to a marketing stunt, but the money and reach were impossible to ignore. The proposal turned their history into a fake narrative about brotherly competition, erasing sabotage, betrayal, and sleepless nights. Jevin wondered if accepting meant letting the world rewrite his trauma as entertainment. Signing would make him richer than Owakcx, but at the cost of admitting none of it had ever mattered. On the night of the final battle, a blackout hit the entire district, killing every light and screen except the ones around Jevin's booth. The blue producer realized the power grid had rerouted to him alone, amplifying his setup to a dangerous, city-wide level. If he played at full strength, his frequencies could overload equipment for kilometers, maybe even injure people. Somewhere in the darkness, Owakcx taunted him to go all in and prove he had the guts to win no matter the cost. Jevin's hands hovered over the controls, torn between victory and responsibility to a city that would never know his name.